Any select committee reports? There are no select committee reports. Are there any bills for introduction? There are no bills for introduction. The House then comes to questions for oral answer, and the first question stands in the name of the Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question's to the Minister of Transport. Has the Prime Minister met with management of KiwiRail or representatives of railway workshop workers to discuss the building of railway wagons at Hillside Workshop in Dunedin and the Hutt workshops in Lower Hutt? If not, why not?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I understand the Prime Minister visited the Hillside workshops and discussed their work on 3 September 2009.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary
Mr.
question.
Speaker.
Just before I call the Honourable Member's supplementary, the member's primary question, how did it start?
I'll read it again. The primary question?
Yeah.
Has the Prime Minister met with? It was, point of order, Mr. Speaker. This question was put down to the Prime Minister, transferred to the Minister of Transport.
My version of questions has it wrong. I thank the member for clarifying that for me. The Honourable David Parker.
The Speaker makes a good point. What happened in respect of this question is that it was put down to the Prime Minister, and I would suggest that it ought to have been answered on behalf of the Prime Minister rather than transferred to the Minister of Transport, and in the process the member who asked the question being forced to change her question. The original question was, has he, the Prime Minister, been to Hillside workshops? The Prime Minister, and it's nothing untoward in that, can't answer the question today, and so the proper course would have been for the government to answer that question on his behalf.
What causes me a little bit of concern is the version of the question I have is somewhat different from what the member read out, and the question was transferred, and that is the prerogative of the government when it is a matter that relates specifically to a particular minister. But the wording I have does not have has the Prime Minister met with, and I'm a little concerned because I don't know how many other members have that.
Mr. Speaker,
before I hear the Honourable Member, I want to clarify what is the. Can the clerk please show me the correct version of the question?
Because it did refer to he being the Prime Minister.
Okay. The question was apparently changed after I received my version of the questions today. And point of order, the Honourable Annette.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask if you would at a later date consider this issue though. Is it possible for it to be transferred to another minister when you're asking the Prime Minister's whether he visited? I wasn't asking the Minister of Transport if he had visited the workshops. I was asking the Prime Minister, and wouldn't normally that go to the acting or Deputy Prime Minister? Instead it was sent to the Minister of Transport, which made it very confusing as to how I then worded it, and I got advice from the clerk. But when you transfer it and you're asking a specific question of a person, I don't know whether the Minister of Transport's been or not. I wanted to know if the Prime Minister had been. And as it was worded, was worded as to whether the Minister of Transport had been. Do you get what I'm saying?
I hear what the member's saying, and I don't think there's any point now taking more time on this issue today. Obviously, it is the government's prerogative to transfer questions so long as the only person who could possibly have the relevant information is not the person from whom it's transferred, or from whom it's transferred. And in this case, I think it is acceptable that other ministers will know whether or not the Prime Minister has met with these people, and that's why I think it is legitimate to be transferred. I am concerned, though, the version of the question I have is not the one that is in front of the House. The Honourable Annette King, supplementary question.
Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister aware New Zealand railway tradesmen have been building carriages, rail wagons and restoring rolling stock since 1875 and are highly skilled? And will he intervene to keep their jobs in New Zealand as he has done for the film industry and now the gambling industry?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, the first question was directed to the in regards to the Prime Minister. The first part of that question, my understanding is he would be aware. In regards to the second question, I don't think that it is appropriate for that to occur because KiwiRail is a company, as I've said previously in the House, that is in a very difficult trading situation. We're seeking to turn it around. We need to give it every commercial opportunity to succeed, and as appropriate it takes the right commercial decisions, and it is also appropriate, it is inappropriate for us to place requirements on that company we wouldn't place on any other company.
The Honourable Annette King.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. Why was the Prime Minister prepared to wine, dine, chauffeur, change the law and suck up to Warner's Brothers to save jobs in the movie industry and now the gambling industry, but has turned his back on hard-working railway workers who can build wagons and carriages in New Zealand and keep their jobs?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, I think the important distinction the member hasn't made is the government often seeks to ease the regulatory burden on companies across the country to enable them to be more successful and help grow the economy. In the situation of tenders for assets, it is actually completely inappropriate for the New Zealand government to prefer New Zealand companies over international companies. If we did, we'd be a very, very small trading nation because countries wouldn't want to trade with us.
The Honourable Annette
Mr
King.
Speaker, why won't he apply the same logic to his support of a convention centre in Auckland where he said, if we build, they will come, to the building of railway wagons at Woburn and Hillside and give the railway workers a chance to attract contracts and more job opportunities in our country?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, I think the previous answer applies to this question as well. I would also point out to the member, if the member wants to require KiwiRail to pay in the order of 25% more than it would otherwise pay to purchase its assets, then that company would struggle, and it wouldn't be a case of a number of jobs at risk. It would be in the order of 4,000 jobs at risk.
The Honourable Annette King.
Question, Mr Speaker. Do the 400 people in Dunedin protesting last night at the loss of jobs and holding fears for the future of their local community have as much influence on the government's decision-making as overseas money interests who came to New Zealand, scooped up millions of dollars from a supplicant government and will leave with the cash as soon as the job is done?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, this is a slightly xenophobic tone appearing in some of these questions, but...
Point of order, the Honourable Annette
I take exception to that comment, Mr
Well,
Speaker.
order. I don't think I need any assistance from the Leader of the House. The member, if she doesn't like that comment, should think about the comments she's included in her own questions. Order. It was probably highly offensive to certain members of the government. And I let them go because if members want to, it wasn't totally unparliamentary, but I'm sure it caused offence. The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, so leaving aside that tone again, I think it is very important to point out to the member is that we need to give KiwiRail the opportunity to be successful. It's a company that was bought back by the previous government at a ridiculously high price. It's been in very poor shape. We've set up a turnaround plan to try and turn it around. We have to give it every commercial chance to succeed. You're talking about 4,000 jobs in total at stake. And yes, I imagine it is very tough for those at the meeting last night in Dunedin, as it is when any organisation changes its structure in order so that it may be more successful.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Why was KiwiRail not given the opportunity to even tender for the railway carriages?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, that's not actually correct. KiwiRail did a tender for the railway wagons using Hillside, and my understanding is that the price difference was of the order of 25% with the successful tenderer. And in the case of the electric trains for Auckland, KiwiRail took its own decision not to tender for those contracts.
Question number 2, Paul Quinn.
Thank you, Mr.